Yeah, guys, I kind of went back and forth on whether or not this was a necessary show. And then I thought, you guys typically like to know how I get to new or slightly tweaked conclusions on players. And that's what this show is. So welcome to a lightning round edition of Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I'm Dan Vespers. Today we're going to go through all 30 teams at the end of the preseason and what our takeaways were. Basically, one, maybe two key takeaways from each team in the NBA and how that's changed the way that I like to run my fantasy drafts. Meaning, who moved up, who moved down, what was I looking for, what did I end up finding? And I think all of this stuff is actually really, really interesting. And I'll also say that I think I probably paid closer attention to the preseason this year than I ever have before for any number of reasons. Number one, because, I'm so hyper-focused right now on putting out show after show after show. I want to make sure that I am, for better or worse, kind of saturating the universe with Old Man Squad content. We got one shot here to get in front of everybody's eyeballs before the season starts, and so I'm not going to miss that. And the other thing is, and this is not a knock on anybody, at my old job, I was also responsible for preseason marketing, which I don't have anymore. And that was multiple hours every single day. So it's all about time management. I have hours right now that I didn't have last year. So the preseason can create stories out of nothing. This part is true. It's less true than Summer League. Summer League creates 99% of stories out of nothing. The preseason, there are certain things that are worth our time and create fantasy tweaks, adjustments that come from that. So let's talk about it. But first, welcome to the show. I'm Dan Vespers at Dan Vespers on Twitter, DanBesbris. I expect all of you guys to find me over there. And most importantly, subscribe. Those bad boys are key, no matter how you're taking in this show. I just, out of curiosity, sometimes you like to Google your own name. I Googled Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball because I wanted to see how it was doing on the Apple podcast charts. And in a very fun twist, we are the number 2 fantasy basketball podcast in the world. And we've done it in a couple of months. Launched this thing in May when no one was paying attention. So really the last 2.5 months, that's what we've been able to do, which thank you to all of you, everybody that's hit that like button, everybody that's subscribed, everybody that's dropped a 5-star review on Apple and Spotify in particular. Those are big ones. That's gotten us to this number 2 spot behind, yes, you guessed it, the great Josh Lloyd. Next time he's on the show, I'll, give him a piece of my mind. But that's pretty damn cool. And let's keep that going. So basically, this is what it's going to look like. We're going to go by division. I'm just moving west, basically, across the United States. Yeah, whatever. I got West Coast bias. Eat me. Everybody else has the opposite, so I get to do it my way. And those that are watching on YouTube, you can see 5 teams at a time. Everybody else, I'm just going to bring them to you one by one, so it won't really change the way we're looking at stuff. For ejemplo, let's start with the Lakers. My big preseason takeaway from the Lakers, it's not how good Dalton Connect looked in that penultimate preseason game. That's all fun, but it doesn't really change anything. My Lakers preseason takeaway is that Rui Hachimura is probably worth a roster spot. Like a 10th, not 10th. Scratch that. Back it up. Probably like a 12th rounder in fantasy leagues. Treat him like a streamer, a hot streaming prospect. At least until Jared Vanderbilt comes back. And I think they'll start to split minutes a bit at that point. But until then, Rui should be on your radar. So the Clippers, and again, we're moving west. The Clippers, not a ton. The funny thing is, we do the Kawhi Leonard stuff. That could be the big takeaway here. But we knew there was going to be a little bit of a mess around Kawhi. That wasn't really my big takeaway. My big takeaway with the Clippers is that they really haven't at any point shown an inclination to getting another scorer on that team, or at least to give anybody that can a bigger opportunity, which, similar to Rui, I'm good with drafting Norm Powell in the 12th round and treating him as a streamer until Kawhi returns. I wouldn't expect to get much after that point because we saw it last year when one of the three big guys was out. Norm did more, but still not enough to be a 9-cat 12-team dude. You needed two guys out to get him there. And that's basically what you've got because Paul George is gone permanently and Kawhi is out indefinitely, where the word seems to be week to week, but we don't really know exactly what that means. Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything sports betting. They've got every stat, matchup breakdown, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. Bet Online boasts the largest catalog of odds on everything from football, baseball playoffs, to hockey, to hoops, baby. Hoops is starting any day now, to political props. And when the games are over, head to the online casino. Get in on some blackjack, some poker, unwind with one of over 150 slot games. Head to the website today to get in on the action with America's most trusted site for online wagering. Bet Online. The game starts here. The Suns' preseason takeaway for me is that Tyus Jones looks more involved than I expected. When they signed him, they did say this was with the expectation that he would start. But what I wasn't sure of was, okay, is this a starting job and then splitting minutes with Grayson Allen and Royce O'Neal and all these other guys kind of getting rotated through? So far, it seems like they prefer Tyus Jones with that group than the other guys. I don't know if that's because they're leaning more into offense than defense, because obviously someone like a Royce O'Neal does more defensively, or if it's just that last year the big takeaway for the Suns maybe was, hey, we need to get a traditional point guard so that our guys can go be what they normally are, which is not a point guard. But either way, Tyus Jones, up my board. I think you could look at him in the 10th round now, and I'm totally fine with that. Sacramento Kings, not much here, actually. Just I think folks should take into account that there's going to be a bit of a learning curve. What that means from a fantasy perspective, I don't really know. I just think the team is probably going to get off to a slightly slower start than Kings fans might want. Sometimes that means that everybody takes a little bit of hit. You might get Kings buy low opportunities across the board at the beginning of the year. Keep an eye out for that. And the Warriors. What I've seen in the preseason is that I don't much like any of these things. I know they've done some good stuff. They brought in a lot of mid-tier talent in Kyle Anderson and DeAnthony Melton and Buddy Hield. And they already had some mid-tier talent and Andrew Wiggins and Brandon Pajemski and Jonathan Kuminga. That's too many mid-tier talents. I think I'm pretty much dodging Warriors not named Steph Curry and Draymond Green this season, at least as of right now. And at some point, maybe one of these guys, sort of the cream rises to the top sort of deal. But typically, the whole point of that expression is that the cream doesn't start at the top. It's somewhere squeezed in the middle, and it takes time to rise. Northwest Division, we'll start with the Trailblazers. This is going to be an ugly year for the Portland Trailblazers. I got a few. The big ones, Donovan Clingan, who looked great in their last preseason game. But, of course, they're down multiple centers in that one. He feels like a great trade deadline stash kind of guy, but no chance I'm drafting him and sitting on him for 4 months. And then the other one with the Blazers is, what are they really doing with Scoot Henderson? Because the assumption, I think, for most of us was we'd come into this year, Scoot got the reins at the end of last season. He put up some eye-popping scoring, assist, threes, steals numbers on horrific turnovers. And I think we thought, all right, well, I'm going to knock the learning curve out of the way there. But it seems like he's buried behind the veterans on this team, which feels flat out idiotic. So is Scoot even as useful a punt, field goal, turnover guy as we had thought as recently as a couple of days ago? I'm starting to think maybe not. Timberwolves. I dig Naz Reid this year. I've said it before. I'll say it again. He was able to kind of keep his numbers under wraps because the preseason and because he didn't explode in any of those ball games. But there's just less competition this year. He is the true backup center on that club, unless you're counting. Wait, is Luka Garza still on that team? I think he is. I wouldn't necessarily count him. And then you've got Julius Randle at power forward. But as I've mentioned before, last year they had Cat and Slow-Mo. They had two guys fighting with Naz Reid and Rudy Gobert. So effectively 4 guys for 2 spots. Now they kind of only have 3 1/4, whatever you want to call it, Garza, for those same spots. That's enough to get Naz Reid a few extra minutes a game, a little bit more like that down the stretch, Naz. And if he shoots better than 42% from the field and like 61 at the free throw line, then you won't see the numbers artificially getting depressed. I legitimately think Naz Reid has a shot to be a top 60 fantasy player this year. So I really like him at the end of the 9th round, mid 9th round, certainly the 10th. Thunder, not much there. I think, we got a pretty good idea of what was going on, and then Isaiah Hartenstein got hurt. So you've got this like first month to just kind of squint at with OKC and figure out what the hell they're going to do when Hartenstein comes back. I'll admit Alex Caruso's preseason role, as it appeared to be detailed, was a little bit of a downward tick for me, but also he finished last year top 50 and he's getting drafted near 90 to 100. So I think there's probably still plenty of wiggle room there for him. And then Chet Holmgren, who is someone that I was fading a bit with Hartenstein coming in. Well, now he's got a month to just run free at the center position. So he'll continue to get the center stats, the rebounds, the blocks, the better field goal percent for at least the first, 3 to 5 weeks of the season. And so he trends back up just a little bit. This is all basically on one note. The Nuggets note this preseason is that Jamal Murray's probably falling too far. I know he's looked bad. He was hurt in the playoffs. He was hurt in the Olympics. He's looked hurt so far this preseason. But at some point, he's going to get his legs underneath him. And dude's getting drafted in the 60s now, but has 35 range per game potential. That, to me, I think is maybe a bit too far. And the Jazz. Well, we've talked about this one because he's appeared on a number of our, Dan's favorites kind of show. Walker Kessler winning that starting job is the, I think, biggest story from any of the 30 teams this preseason, at least not injury related. Kessler's got the job. He's got top 40 potential if he can start to get closer to starters minutes. Well, yeah, I mean, I guess we're not going to expect 30, but 26, 27, 28, that's a big year. Also, byproduct of this, fading John Collins, like quite a lot. And that's all tied into the same piece of information. Let's go Southwest. The Memphis Grizzlies. Liking what I'm seeing of Zach Edey so far. We haven't seen Jaren Jackson Jr. yet, and they're saying they hope he's ready for their season opener, which we'll see, I suppose. And maybe that puts a little bit of a damper on the Edey thing, but I think I'm good with him as a very early 10th round pick because he's a big who does big man stuff, but isn't a horrible free throw shooter. Low 70s is kind of the number he's kicking around with right now. And that gives him room for upside. The Dallas Mavericks. My faith in Daniel Gafford remains unwavering. I don't care that he's coming off the bench probably most of the time. I guess they could start him against some bulkier big men, but let's assume he's coming off the bench. I only need, 21, 22 minutes out of Gafford and he'll be fine. I have seen him start to go as early as the 80s in some drafts, and I think then folks are maybe getting a little out in front of their skis in that, there is still the chance that he only gets 19, 20 minutes a ball game this year. And so now you wipe out whatever upside might be baked in on the Daniel Gafford thing. Derek Lively II is the starter. He's got the first crack at those minutes. Gafford's going to take what's left. I think it's going to be 20 to 23 range. But the whole point of it is if you're going to draft a reserve who puts up big numbers in limited minutes, you better get them after pick 100. The San Antonio Spurs. I think the Spurs have kept a lot under wraps this preseason. We haven't seen Chris Paul or Victor Wembanyama really get particularly, loose. How many games did they even play, the two of them? Wemby didn't, and CP3 didn't play in their last one. That was on, Thursday? Did they play in the one before that? Well, let's go back. Let's double check. They did. Wemby played 16 and a half minutes. Chris Paul played 25 in that one, which, cool. Chris Paul, he also had 6 turnovers in that game. But, CP3 can get to 25 minutes pretty easily. And if Wemby's in there with him, you're going to see 7 assists. That's just the rate he's at. I don't know what his shot selection is going to look like. I kind of don't care. I don't know that Chris Paul's efficiency could get a whole lot worse than it was last year. So I like the fact that they haven't really let him do anything this preseason, because I think it's kept Chris Paul's potential kind of under wraps. I'm more likely to take him in a roto spot than a head-to-head because he's old as dirt, meaning not that much younger than me, effectively. So games missed are going to be a problem for CP3, and there's only so many guys like that you can take when you don't think the per game is going to outpace the ADP by that much. But GamesCap Roto, absolutely. A lock around number 100 to give you difficult to acquire stats like assists and steals and do it on relatively low turnovers. The Houston Rockets, not much in the way of takeaways here. We already were talking highly of Amen Thompson even before the preseason. It's nice to know that he is the guy, no matter which dude in the starting lineup is out. I just ask you, is Freddie VanVleet the most underdrafted for no reason guy in fantasy? It's just because nobody wants a guy not scoring 20 points in the first 3 rounds, but he's so good at so many other things. Pelicans. This preseason has done nothing to allay my fears about how this team's going to split up minutes and touches. It remains one of life's great mysteries, and they'll solve it at some point. It might involve trading Brandon Ingram or sitting someone like CJ McCollum, turning him into a bench role where maybe he doesn't get to do quite as much. But however you frame it, I've seen nothing to get me off of my position of I don't trust them to get guys the stats that fantasy enthusiasts want them to have. So I'm mostly avoiding these guys. I know McCollum's going so late that I'm kind of okayed with it, and now DeJounte Murray's going in the 40s, which is probably fine. But you've got the Zion free throw issue. You've got the Brandon Ingram doesn't do anything besides score and get some assists out of a forward spot issue. There's issues, man. And how are they going to get Trey Murphy run? He's hurt right now, so I guess that's less of a problem. But how are they going to get Herb Jones run? At least with Herb, you're just shooting for efficiency and some defensive stats. The bar is much lower there. Let's go to the Eastern Conference. Start in the Southeast Division. The Heat. I have a weird feeling the Heat are going to be annoying in fantasy this year. Jimmy Butler, I think, will be pretty good. Happy to draft him anywhere in the 4th round. Bam Adebayo, basically the same story, although you probably have to go to the 3rd to get him, so I likely won't have that much Bam Adebayo on my team this year. Rozier is going to be probably a little annoying. Hero is going to be a little annoying. Any of the other guys, they're all going to be extremely annoying. And so I don't think I'm going to have that many Heat unless I end up with kind of like a mid-late pick, like maybe a 7-8 slot in fantasy drafts. I might end up getting Butler in the 4th coming back. That would be like right around pick 40, 41, something like that. My Magic preseason takeaway is that Jalen Suggs looks great so far. He's rendered Kentavious Caldwell-Pope completely useless, which is not true. He's going to be there to space the floor a little bit, but Suggs looks awesome. Happy to take him in the mid-90s, near 100. Looks like he's going to be a great defensive specialist with a little bit of other stuff baked in, and you just hope that the percentages don't hurt you too much. My Hawks takeaway is I think there's going to be a crap ton of fantasy value on this team, and I can't wait to exploit it. The big issue, of course, with the Hawks is, do they get eliminated from the Eastern Conference play-in race with more than 3 weeks to go? I think the answer is no. As bad as they're going to be, and they're going to be kind of bad, the bottom of the East is god-awful. So guys like Dyson Daniels should put up nice numbers. Bogdan Bogdanovic, Trae Young, Jalen Johnson, if Onyeka Okongwu... Oh, he played. By the way, Okongwu played towards the end of their preseason. I forgot to mention that. I don't know what the minute split's going to look like with Okongwu and Clint Capella, but I would say have some confidence in Okongwu now. Take him between 100 and 115 confidently. I hope he takes the starting job. I hope Capella gets moved. I don't know that either of those things is going to happen, so we're not going to bank on it, but he'll put up some pretty good numbers. I mean, that team, I don't really want Capella all that badly. So yeah, let's scratch Capella. I don't want him. End of sentence. The Washington Wizards. So Jordan Poole party, he's gonna be a lot of fun this year. Hopefully enough people were burned last season that they don't want him anymore. And then Jonas Valanciunas, who I thought for sure was going to be a guy getting drafted outside the top 100, isn't. And so I don't think I'm going to end up with many JV, certainly very few on the head-to-head side, because I don't think he's going to be fantasy relevant in the playoffs for head-to-head leagues. Roto, I'd probably take him towards the end of the 8th, beginning of the 9th round, and hope that I get a nice 3.5 super efficient months. But that's a pretty good price to pay for someone that you don't expect to last the season. Typically, guys like that, you get 10th or later. Charlotte Hornets, I've had to rethink, and the preseason didn't really change the way I've looked at Miles Bridges. And look, you say whatever the hell you want about his off-the-court stuff. I did not draft him anywhere last season. Completely avoided. This year, I'm looking at it a little bit of a different standpoint. He didn't play in their preseason finale, blah, blah, blah. It doesn't matter. What I'm looking for with Miles Bridges and why I might consider drafting him is the thought that having LaMelo around, does that bring his efficiency back up near 50%? His shooting, I should say. The answer is I don't know. If it does, he jumps about 2 rounds, 60s to late 30s kind of thing. Is that enough? Probably not. Central Division. We got 2 divisions left. I told you this was going to be lightning round. We're doing it in a half an hour or less. Fear not, people. We're not doing an hour-long show on a weekend. Cavaliers. I'm very bullish on the Cavs. I like the likely change in style, coach to coach, and I just like the fit. I think this is a good team that didn't have health last year. Evan Mobley was out for long stretches. Darius Garland was out for long stretches. Donovan Mitchell was out for long stretches. And I don't know. I can't say for certain that they're going to be healthy this year, but they just have a really nice blend, and those guys know how to play off each other. And so you've got Garland, who's kind of being drafted where people want him to finish, so not much in the way of value there. But Donovan Mitchell being drafted as if he's hurt already. Jared Allen being drafted as if he's going to take some big step back. Evan Mobley being drafted as if there's no room for improvement. It's a good team to get in on. Indiana Pacers. I saw enough to think that the Pacers are going to be exactly what I thought they were going to be, which is a team that's probably going to get Rick Carlisle in a lot of ways, where they've got Halliburton, who's going to log big minutes, and Miles Turner, who's going to log sub-big minutes, and Pascal Siakam, who's going to log big minutes, and then like 12 dudes that are all going to be fighting for whatever's left. Ben Shepherd, Andrew Nembhard, Aaron Nesmith, Jarris Walker, TJ McConnell, Benedict Mathurin, all of these guys have a claim to some of that. And on any given night, Isaiah Jackson, you can throw into the mix too. On any given night, these guys are going to be seeing more of it. Or less of it. The good time started last year, and this is not a nice way to frame it, but the good time started last year when Benedict Mathurin got hurt. Not because we wanted to see him go down, but because that allowed Nesmith to take more shots and McConnell to take more shots and basically to run the second unit. And any moment that Halliburton wasn't on the floor, it was TJ McConnell time. Prior to that, when Halliburton wasn't on the floor, it was Mathurin time. I don't know what's better or worse for the Pacers. I don't care. I know what's better or worse for fantasy. TJ McConnell time was better for fantasy. Pistons, I'm kind of bullish on this year. I've lost track of what their season win total looked like. I didn't have time to do my 30 season win total predictions. Sorry, guys. We'll get back into those next year. This was like, got to build the fantasy show season. But I think it's going to be good. I would probably take the over on Detroit because the vibes are going to be better. They're going to be trying to win. They're going to be playing the right guys to do it. I mean, the hilarity of the fact that Killian Hayes just got waived by a tanking team and was like a big part of what the Pistons were doing last year tells you how little Monty Williams was keyed in on what was going on, or how maybe he decided he just wanted to get fired. Anyway, I think it's going to be good for fantasy numbers. I think Cade's going to have good numbers. I think Tobias Harris is going to have big numbers. Jalen Duren's likely being overdrafted on the prowess of his rebounding because he doesn't steal or block shots very much. So that's a little bit of a downer. But Cade, Tobias in particular, I think are just going to be helped by the fact that the Pistons are going to play better basketball this year. Milwaukee Bucks. I still don't trust Chris Middleton. I know a report came out today saying I might be ready by opening night. Stop it. Stop it. He's not going to be ready by opening night. Come on. Doc Rivers said, quote unquote, there's a chance. There's no chance. And even when they bring him back, how are they going to bring him back? Is it going to be, 22 minutes for a month and then 26 minutes for a month like they did last year? By the way, got some injury news while we were on air related to the Cavaliers. Max Strus apparently is out for 6 weeks. So whatever, more Sam Merrill, more Karis LeVert, more Dean Wade kind of stuff, but you're not picking up those guys anyway. Probably should have done a show on all the big preseason injuries, but I think it's more important to try to cover a little bit of everything here. So that's unfortunate. That's a downer for a Cavs team that I think is still going to be pretty good, but well. Back to the topic at hand. I don't trust Chris Middleton and I don't trust Doc Rivers. This is decent news. Well, okay, depends on how you interpret it. If you think he's going to start on opening night, it's not good news for someone like a Gary Trent Jr., who you're not drafting anyway. My thought actually on what the Bucks look like this year, I think Bobby Portis could be better than where he's being drafted. He had a run of better steals towards the end of last season. That's not a thing that I necessarily think sticks for him, but he's a pretty efficient points, rebounds, power forward type who was taking some playing time away from Brook Lopez. And if Giannis or Brook Lopez misses any time at all, then it's all systems Portis. Nikola Mirotic looking on, a single tear welling in his eye. Where would I take Chris Middleton? I would take Chris Middleton in a games cap league outside the top 115, meaning basically when you're through guys like Gafford, Amen Thompson, Tyus Jones, guys that you think are actually going to play all year. That's the next. Middleton is in that next chunk in games cap. Head-to-head, I'm not touching him. Unlimited game spot, I'm not touching, but I think it's going to be in another annoying year. The Bulls. Backcourt's a logjam, and Lonzo Ball is only playing 15 minutes a game right now. If that actually gets into the mid-20s, the jam gets worse. Because you got Ball, you've got White, you've got Giddey, you've got Dosunmu, whose poor guy doesn't get to play, even though he's probably the most efficient out of all of those dudes. You've got Zach LaVine, depending on where you think he ends up going. What are they going to do with all this? Not all of those guys can take 18 shots a ball game. Someone's going to have to take the step back. Is it going to be Giddey, who's going to go pure pass rebound type point guard? Is it going to be LaVine just doing less? That feels unlikely. Is it going to be Kobe White? I don't know. And for that reason, I'm generally not going down that path. Someone was asking me, because I posted one of my Roto League results over on the socials, and Lonzo Ball was my 15th round pick in a Games Cap Roto League. Okay, that's a zero pressure, like sit on him for 3 weeks kind of thing. See if his minutes get into the 20s after 2 or 3 weeks. If they do, you start to see the trend line on how much he's going to play. If Lonzo actually gets healthy, he's probably their best player. Yes, better than Zach LaVine. I know he can't score as well, but just in like what he would bring to the table, I think he's their okay, how about this? He's their most important player. And most important player plays if their body can handle it. And they're going to be gentle with him, and that's why we got to make sure we give it some time. And finally, the Atlantic Division. The Celtics, they were the lone team with no preseason takeaways of any kind. But no one's like, oh, Al Horford looked terrible. Yeah, I mean, Al Horford's old, man. Old dudes don't take the preseason seriously. Not off a finals run. Horford's like, guys, I'll play when it matters. Just trust me, I'm fine. Horford is a guy you're drafting in the probably, I'd love to say 12th round. That's the range, I think, for Horford, because you expect to get about a half year of really nice production. There's nothing else. Let's go to the next team. Raptors. Am I too low on Grady Dick? That's the question I took away from this preseason. He shot the ball really well. I still don't believe that he does anything besides shoot. So I'm going to say no. I'm not too low on Grady Dick. He might be a three-pointers specialist at the end of your draft, but aren't there like 15 of those? Maybe not as efficient. Maybe the other guys are worse for your team's health, but I don't think we're going to get much out of him. The New York Knicks, my preseason takeaway is that Mikal Bridges in particular looks dreadful. And Josh Hart has said he doesn't know how the hell he fits with this team right now. But I'm not that worried about it because once the game matters, he's going to go and get a bunch of rebounds. My big thing is that I think I'm shying away from Mikal Bridges. And it wasn't because he looked bad in the preseason. It was because the longer I mulled this one over, and I think I said it on a podcast with someone that was talking about Bridges, I said, my big fear is that we get this weird combination of last year unbelievably inefficient Bridges with no energy to play defense, combined with Phoenix Bridges, which was much more efficient, focused a little more on D and making open looks, but like some weird midpoint where he doesn't get that many shots and the efficiency doesn't come all the way back. And the steal block combo doesn't really get back where we want it to be. It was never massive for him, but it was always pretty good. And then you get like the worst of all worlds. Now, he's arguably the most durable player in the entire NBA. So that is going to be a feather in Mikal Bridges' cap no matter what else is going on for him fantasy-wise. So even if you draft him at 65 and he's like a top 90 per game guy, he's probably going to play 82 games this year and he's going to play a ton of minutes. So it's going to be hard for him to be a total disaster. Also because the Knicks have no depth, so he's probably going to have to play 37 minutes a night. So that's good for rebounding, good for assists, good for steals, good for blocks, things that just have him out on the court a little bit longer. But man, I don't think I can take him before 65. The Brooklyn Nets, we're down to our last two teams. Brooklyn Nets had a couple of things. One was that prior to the preseason, we're trying to figure out what Noah Clowney was going to be doing. And I had him listed, you guys might remember this, on a show that I called the One Away Guys. The guys that were one thing away from being fantasy relevant. And Noah Clowney is that guy for me. And the preseason confirmed that. The other thing I was looking for from the Nets in the preseason is what was Cam Johnson's role going to be? And for a little bit of time, it looked like he was just going to let Dennis Schroeder run amok. And then in their last preseason game, Cam Johnson was like, nah, screw this. I'm a better shooter than all of you idiots. And he took a bunch and he made a bunch. Brooklyn's going to get blown out a lot, which is a problem. However, if they want to have any shot of staying close, they need Cam Johnson to be a scorer. And so I think I'm back in on Cam as an 11th rounder. Push him up from 12 to 11. Put him a little bit out in front of some of these other dudes. And finally, the Philadelphia 76ers. Obviously, the big preseason story is that Joel Embiid is not playing in any preseason games. Paul George hyperextended his knee. Neither one of those guys is expected to play in back-to-back games all year. And so what does that create? Andre Drummond stream time. Tyrese Maxey moves up the board a little bit as well. But mostly, Andre Drummond stream time. Oh, yeah. I'm drafting the crap out of Drummond in the 12th or 13th round in all formats because Games Cap Roto, you just drop him in there when Embiid is out, which could be the first few games of the year. It's going to be some parts of back-to-backs pretty much all season long. You could sit on Drummond all year, and you might get 25 starts out of him on the Roto side, if you have enough roster spots for that. You might not. Head-to-head, it's probably more a start him until Embiid comes back and then try to arrange your 4 pickups a week so you can pick up Drummond for a Philly back-to-back in any given week. Make sure you're checking schedule, stuff like that. That you want to be a little bit more on top of it. Roto, that this equation is a bit easier. You could also, and I didn't put this on the board here, but you could also go Kelly Oubre stream to start the year if Paul George also misses opening night, which I think we're all kind of assuming that he will. And those, ladies and gentlemen, are my takeaways from all 30 teams and what they mean from a fantasy perspective. It honestly, it meant a lot to me. This ended up being a very relevant preseason, and I hope it brought some sort of clarity to you guys as well. Good luck in your drafts. I have, again, 6 this weekend. I think I have like 9 between Saturday and Monday. My family's not thrilled about it, by the way. Good luck to you in your drafts. Good luck to you convincing your family that this is very much worth them not seeing you for 2 to 3 days. It's an argument you're probably not going to win. Thank you again to everyone that's helped make us the number 2 fantasy basketball podcast in the world this quickly. Let's keep going, baby. Look, I ain't catching Josh. I know that. Tip of the cap to the Podfather. But we want to get as close so we can sniff the exhaust fumes. Let's get high. Dan Vespris is the Twitter handle. DanBesbris on exhaust fumes. Old Man Squad on Twitter. Old Man Squad Fantasy over on Instagram. Hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button. Drop that 5-star review, and we'll see you guys with a couple more shows before the season begins tomorrow. So long for now.